Good evening and welcome to Galactic Terrors for September 2023, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am Jim Chambers, and with me is Carol GYZANDER.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to September, which is almost October.
It's getting close. Yeah, I've seen people posting that September is Halloween Eve, and I think I can get on board with that.
Yes. Or isn't like November 1st Halloween Eve? Because, it's just a countdown to the next year. Yeah.
You could make a case for that.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But tonight we're mostly concerned with our fantastic lineup of authors who will be reading from their work tonight. Joining us are F. Deal, RUSS COLCHAMIRO, and Tommy B. Smith. So we'll be getting into those readings in just a few minutes, and we'll be looking to take your questions in the chat. And in the meantime, Galactic Terrors, for those of you who may not have been here before, occurs every second Thursday of the month. And a good way to find out about future Galactic Terrors transmissions is to click subscribe below. In fact, I think this is something that we're supposed to encourage you to do is mash the like and subscribe buttons below our YouTube window there. I think there's some little icons like a thumb up, maybe something like that. I don't know. And that will magically continue the galactic transmissions, which at last report, we had enough likes and subscribes that we're actually reaching Saturn, I think, at this point. Whether we'll ever be able to reach the outer planets is up to the audience tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll have to see how our orbital proximity relates to future endeavors. Yeah. So that's all the radium, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. It's it's techno jargon babble.
Exactly.
But you can also sign up for our Galactic Terrors newsletter, which is a lot of fun, and that goes out, the planets aligning correctly. It goes out twice a month, once to announce the upcoming session, and once just about the day before or day of to just remind you that we're going to be going on with some great readings and awesome authors. So go ahead and sign up for that if you want to follow us and find out what's happening in the Galactic Terrors world.
And it's a nice way to find the links easily too, instead of having to dig around in the computer. So you can just open that up and find the links.
Yes.
So, yeah. And we don't believe in spam. Spam is a wonderful lunch meat. My mother was Southern. If you slice it and fry it, it's delicious. But other than that, no spam.
So I think we have a little bit of HWA news to share. We usually like to share some of that at the beginning because the Horror Writers Association New York chapter sponsors and supports Galactic Terrors every month. You can find out more about the HWA NY at hwany.org. And I guess the most recent news from the Horror Writers Association are the upcoming elections for trustees and officers. So if you're an HWA member and you're listening to this, check your email for the slate of candidates running. I think that went out just a couple of days ago. Although it was announced earlier in the year too. And you should be receiving your ballot email at some point to cast your vote.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And we also have a town hall meeting coming up with HWA.
Yes, thank you for reminding us. September 28th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Cool.
I think,
and that's fun. I enjoyed the last one. It's a great way to hear a lot of people talk that we know of through variety of different emails and social media things. But it's cool to hear the people actually speaking. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, so that'll be a bit of an open Q&A and discussion and presentation with some of the officers and trustees.
Yeah,
of the HWA. And it will be recorded, so if you're an HWA member and you can't make it on the 28th, don't fret. You will have a chance to see that after the fact.
And for those who are not HWA members, we also, and particularly just readers, there's no such thing as just readers. Where would any of us be without readers, right, Jim? So
it's true.
Yeah. I just want to interject something that is important and really fascinating and relevant to this season because we've all heard of the pumpkin spice craze, right? Well, Wendy's has a new flavor of their Frosty for the month of October. They have a pumpkin spice Frosty.
And I will award 1,000 bonus points to anyone with us tonight who can tell me what a Frosty is. What is the actual substance of a Frosty? I don't believe that's something you can find in nature. I'm not even sure that it came from a mad scientist's lab. I feel like it landed here in a meteorite, and some scientists have figured out how to replicate it.
Well, in the movie The Blob, way back when the blob is coming through those holes in the movie theater and it's like dripping, that's a Frosty.
That could be it. That could be it.
And
And
it's
I have to
originally
say, I'm not the biggest pumpkin spice aficionado. I don't mind it. Sometimes it's it suits the mood, but I do get a kick out of all of the pumpkin spices back memes.
Mhm.
Especially, I think there was one recently that just I thought was really a lot of fun with I see in the audience Teal is getting there before me. Ground up sandworms. It was the Dune meme for the pumpkin spice must flow. So I thought that was fun. Whoops, and there's our website. Hold on a second. How about we just welcome you? There we go.
Yeah, welcome.
Awesome.
It's very fun.
So next month we'll probably be doing a lot more Halloween chit chat. I don't know. Maybe we should wear masks or something next month, or make our audience wear masks. Yeah,
I thought
we have no idea.
I thought we were wearing masks, Jim. Yeah, wait. Okay. No, that'll be fun. I love a Halloween show, and it's something cool to look forward to. We may have a few interesting graphics that we'll put up. That's kind of fun too. So
Yeah,
but in the meantime, we have some excellent readers with us tonight.
absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and get started? All
Sounds
right.
great.
So our first reader tonight is F. Deal. F is a musician, a poet, an editor, a video editor, and an author of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. She began writing at the age of 9, teaching herself to type on an Underwood Royal typewriter. Her short fiction has been published in numerous online zines and print anthologies, including the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction, and most recently in A Cast of Crows from eSpec Books, Dangerous Waters from Brigid's Gate, and Chris Ryan's Soul Scream Antholozine. She is currently assistant fiction editor at Abyss and Apex magazine and video editor for Strong Women, Strange Worlds. Her novel Esprit de Corps from eSpec Books is the first in a steampunk paranormal romance series set in France, featuring the gifted twins of Bellafise, who tend to show up in other eSpec Books anthologies. She lives in Haddonfield, New Jersey with her husband and her chow chow. She is a member of SIFWA and HWA. Her website is fdeal.net. You can follow her blog Tail Spinner at fdeal.blogspot.com. All right, let's welcome F.
All throughout America, and I think throughout the world, there are bridges where if you stand long enough and look long enough into the distance, you will hear a cry of a baby, or perhaps the young woman who lost the baby. Crybaby Bridge is an effort, an anthology from Speculation Publications. And this is my explanation of why there is a cry. This is called Concrete Soul. Soul me, soul me. It's a simple minor third. At 7 a.m., your mother calls you to wake you up for school. At 6 p.m., your mother calls you to dinner. Doesn't matter how many syllables are in your name, it's the same minor third. Echoes of your first lullaby cooed throughout the day, soothing, begging you to trust the ones who feed and nurture you, who hold your hand as you take your first steps. Soul me, and your soul soars, at least for the moment. at least for a few short years, until the chant is appropriated by the herd of children around you, who give you new names in that minor third, wedging it into your soul to give you a new me. Tattletale, tattletale, stick your head in a garbage pail. Made you look, you dirty crook, stole your mother's pocketbook. Nanny, nanny, poo, poo, filled your pants with doo-doo. Nanny, nanny, nanny. In every culture, every country, a universal call, a primal invocation, a concrete cry cementing your identity to all the world until the next rite of passage. First communion, first day of school, first time you wet your pants in school. For the children of Oakland Avenue, the only rite of passage that mattered was the crossing of the ancient railroad bridge with Mrs. Easton when you turned 5 years old. Oakland Avenue teemed with children, most of the families being Catholic. No waiting to get picked for a team. Someone always grabbed your hand and pulled you into the game of the night and told you where to stand, and you had half the entire neighborhood on your side. You were safe, needed, wanted, and cheered on, unless the herd turned suddenly feral, surrounding you, pointing, "Nina, nina, nina, so me," until the mothers of Oakland Avenue leaned out the back doors and chanted your name in a minor third, the ritual that called you home to be fed and loved. Every summer at 6:30, Mrs. Easton, the Methodist Sunday school teacher, came out to set on her front steps and watch the herd playing in the street. Kickball or softball teams comprised David and Nancy, Debbie, Billy, and Tommy, Billy, Eddie, Patty, Peggy, Teresa, Chucky and Orr, Charlie, Luann, Franny, Joe, Ronnie and Lynn, Margie, Donald, Kenny, Dale, Dean, Dane, Diana, Donna, and you. When you saw Mrs. Easton, you'd all finish up the game and gather around her, and she'd listen to your news, your stories, your dreams. She'd feed your hopes and nurtured your greatest desires. The herd became Mrs. Easton's flock. Then at 6:55, she shepherded all of you who were at least 5 years old into a defile, and off you trekked up Oakland Avenue, then turned left on Graysbury, and here your heart began to beat a little faster. You could smell the sweat of the herd, even if you weren't quite aware of it, a sour tang that told of the day's play as much as the nervous dread of the ceremony to come. A vague shadow loomed a half block up on West Atlantic, a wall of concrete and iron, the first hint of the dark violence of the world just beyond the leafy trees that shaded your walk. The railroad bridge. You laughed harder and talked louder, trying to avoid the inevitable moment of decision until it was upon you. If you were a whiner, a crybaby, a fraidy cat, you continued up West Atlantic, gathering clover and Queen Anne's lace into bouquets that would invariably die before you could get them home again, trying to ignore the chant of the herd. Cry, baby, spoke you in the eye, baby. But if you were brave enough, you'd cross the monumental bridge over the railroad tracks to the bank of East Atlantic to meet up with all the fraidy cats at the railroad crossing 2 blocks later, to continue on together to the drugstore for snowballs. You knew nothing of metaphors, but you understood at a visceral level the significance of your passage over that bridge, a ceremonial declaration of your spirit, your fortitude, your honor, your courage. Looming larger than the bridge, the weight of shame that would smother you if you failed. Don't you want to die, baby? Many times a new 5-year-old would attempt the climb, only to run back to the safety of West Atlantic Bank, clasping the hands of Debbie, Billy, or Tommy, who never took the bridge, even though they were older and probably weren't really afraid because they were bigger. Wasn't there some measure of courage for the ones who didn't cry but strode defiantly away from the leering dare of those concrete steps? So me. Timing was crucial. The passenger rail, a sleek silver snake of windowed cars, haggard faces pasted to the glass, some of whom you recognized as neighbors, fathers, passed by at 6:50. But at 7:13, the freight train from Atlantic City came through. So you dawdled up Graysbury Avenue, collecting pretty stones and dandelions, showing off your treasures to Mrs. Easton, vying for her attention and affection and approval, until the moment that separated the worthy from the worthless. Far in the distance, the bellowing cry of the oncoming black steel dragon struck fear in your soul. For 5 years you'd heard that wail in the night, felt the house shake as the roar closed in on you, cursing you, threatening you, filling your body with horror as the volume drove a scream out of you into the pillow, then fading away, mocking you as you shoved your face deeper into the pillow and soaked it with tears. The dragon called you, and you quailed. Your skin turned to goose flesh. Your head rang with the echoes of a taunting minor third. Cry, baby, poke you in the eye, baby. Was it anger that drove you? Was it the desire to be accepted by the herd? You were 5, you didn't know. The bridge. Massive, formidable, but not indomitable. All of the others had conquered the bridge. You could too. The bridge would keep you above the dragon. The walkway would hold you high, and you would look down on the dragon in triumph, maybe a slight sneer of disdain. You would never fear anything again. The bridge was a testament to FDR and the CCC, and you had no idea what that meant. But it was engraved on the concrete foundations. Concrete steps, wrought iron rails a kid could poke a head through, or sit and dangle legs over the edge, as the older ones would do. A foot on the first step announced to the world your commitment to crossing. You couldn't back down now, unless you wanted that sing-song slap all the way to the drugstore, maybe all your life. Don't you wanna cry, baby? Don't you wanna die, baby? You set your foot to the concrete, and something like electricity zapped up your whole leg. You froze for a moment until the predatory, toothy grins of the feral herds surrounded you like hyenas ready to chant. So you wrapped your hand around the rusting wrought iron rail and pulled yourself up to the next step, then the next. The weight of the concrete dragging you down at first became lighter as you climbed. The surge rose to your belly and then to your head with each step. 17 steps to the landing. Oh, so high, higher than you'd ever climbed. What if you fell? But you couldn't fall. You couldn't stop to fail. 10 more steps up to the walkway. Breath came faster and faster, and standing finally at the top step, you could see over all the rooftops in town. You laughed and laughed because you really wanted to scream in terror. You clung to the rails, rust staining your clothes and biting into your hands as you watched Billy, Debbie, Tommy on the banks of West Atlantic gathering bouquets, unashamed, unafraid, safe. 2 blocks away, the railroad crossing bells clanged. Fear exploded in bombs of sweat in your armpits. Red lights flashed, and you clenched your knees tight against the threat of wetting yourself. In the distance, The light of the locomotive glared like a single eye of a steel monster bearing down on you, relentless. If you ran, you could have made it across the bridge before the train got to you. But if you ran, the chant would begin. So you wrapped both arms around the corroded iron, reeling head pressed between the rust, vision blurred as the dragon's one eye blazed and flared. It barreled toward you, just you, because it knew you recognized its power over you and hungered for the taste of your terror. Huge boxcars marked with arcane spells heaved toward you, any second coming for you, ramming into you, and then you screamed. The locomotive roared beneath you. You stared in wonder as it disappeared between your legs beneath the concrete. For the next 80 seconds, the dragon belched fire, the bridge rattled, the rust grated your skin, and you screamed, such a cry that emptied your whole body and filled you with hilarity. You lived. You survived. You stared into the faces of the herd, as white and as sweaty as yours, and you laughed and laughed, shrill and too sharp. At 7:15, Mrs. Easton walked serenely across the bridge, down the steps of the other side, her flock safe behind her, and you laughed all the way to the drugstore. Syrupy snowballs froze the memory inside you, your courage branded on you for everyone to see. Every evening, every summer, you climbed the concrete steps until you were old enough to find new meaning in that old bridge. Long after the herd, long after the 7:13, night would fall, the street lights would flicker, and mothers called their children home. Saw me. You weren't a child anymore. Your first period, elementary graduation, your first bra, junior high with its new cruelties, its new herd. Your first dance, the scent of the herd pervasive, fear now mingling with a predatory curiosity. Your first broken heart. No Mrs. Easton, just you, defiant, unafraid, unashamed. You survived. The rusted wheel grating of the cricket sang a song of endings with the monotone buzz of cicadas' grumbled discontent. Summer was almost gone, and a new rite of passage awaited. You feared nothing. You believed you could survive anything as you sat on the concrete walkway with your legs dangling between the rust-red railing posts, waiting for the 9:25 train. Dropping dandelions and daisies one by one to the tracks below, gazing into the night to catch the dragon's single eye. You were old friends, you and the dragon, respected adversaries. You had defeated it night after night, year after year, and you never once wept. What are you doing here? Tommy, so much bigger than you. The cuter brother, smooth brown hair and blue eyes. Football, baseball, wrestling, nothing you ever liked. But you always liked his smile. And in the distance, the dragon announced its advent. I'm waiting for the train. Up here? You turned away. You never did like the bridge. He held out his hand. Come with me, I'll show you a better place to watch from. The dragon called again. It knew. The dragon had seen so much more than you could ever know about rituals, passages, and the importance of knowing which challenges to face. Its angry roar almost stopped you. No! You're mine! But you had conquered the bridge so many times, and Tommy offered a new challenge, a leering dare. So you took his hand, a commitment to crossing. You followed him down the concrete stairs, below the concrete stairs, under the concrete stairs. You didn't know, couldn't have known what the dragon already knew. Paralyzed as he slammed you into the foundation and clamped one hand over your mouth while the other fumbled to pluck bouquets. Breath came faster and you tried to protest. He pinched your nose. No sound but the dragon's roar, summoning you to be brave, challenging you to defy. And you did defy. But you failed. The scream you couldn't scream leached into the concrete, deeper than blood, deeper than shadow. It clawed its way up the corroded rails as the train barreled toward the bridge, deafening in metallic blasts, soul-saving in steel shrieks, arcane symbols cursing you as the cars loomed loud, coming for you. The locomotive bellowed, ramming the breath from you. The keening of the dragon faded into echoes. Tears streaked your white face. Life left your body. You saw only his sneer as he zipped, and his foot just before he kicked your head into the concrete. Cry, baby. Your silence released you, freezing you to the moment as no snowball could do. You faded into the night, into the darkness, beneath the weight of shame. So me. Mothers call their children home. They will always call. So me. The herd taunts. They will always taunt. Years swallow your memory. The foundation devours your flesh. Rust corrodes your bones. Clover and Queen Anne's lace flourish around you like lush tresses of hair plucked by generations of the defiant, the unashamed. Every evening at 7:13, Mrs. Easton's granddaughter now stands with a new flock on the bridge. The dragon roars above their cries, seizing their voices and dragging them into the distance. Their laughter fixes forever their triumph. The bridge shudders beneath their feet, reverberating with Tommy's final curse. And yes, you cry. You will always cry. You'll never stop crying, your soul cemented forever in a final passage. Every evening at 7:15, Mrs. Easton's granddaughter pauses, startled, on the concrete walkway, looking back once more, uncertain, before descending the concrete stairs. The end.
Oh my goodness, that was awesome. And I already know that you're a musician, so thank you for adding the appropriate uh, minor chords to the story because that really helps a lot. Boy, that taunt, na 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 na. Na. Oh, we have many of us heard that over and over again. So yeah, I kind of got chills feeling it all over again. Yeah, wow, that was amazing. So, and Teresa even added wash hands, wash hands. Yeah, cool. So in this anthology, each of the stories is, and I just want to say hi to your husband, Jack, who's behind you. Hi, Jack.
Yes, he's
one of your best audiences, I know.
Hi, Jack.
Each of the stories in this book is about a particular bridge, right?
Yes.
Well, that's very cool. And
some method of explaining why people hear this.
Okay.
And that's one thing other speculation publications does is they take a mystery or an urban legend and they collect stories about what made it. Why is it?
Okay. Well, you were kind enough to share with me. That's
my bridge.
Actual bridge.
17 stairs up and then
wow.
another 10 to the top.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel how big a hike that is for a little one.
Yep.
That's just amazing. I have lived on train lines most of my life, and my dad used to go out on the back porch in the morning with his coffee in his underwear, probably while he's drinking the coffee. And he knew exactly when the train would come by, and he would go inside when the train went by, and then go back out again when it was gone. Well. So I also was very intrigued with this story by the way you gave a lot of background and history, and then went into the story. So I think that was very kind of cool.
Thank you.
There was some philosophical interest in there as well.
Interest, yes. The bridge. Yeah. It was a huge rite of passage. You had to be 5, and at the same time, you only got the one shot, and then after that, you were cursed to the West Bank.
Wow. Wow. And you'd be a crybaby forever.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's crazy.
Mm.
That's crazy. So, and I just want to do this real quickly. Teresa had asked what your steampunk book was, and I love the cover of this so much. It's such a fun story. That's Esprit de Corpse. So I just wanted to show that and share. That's the first of a series, and I heard you read some really cool parts of that at the C3 convention. So there's great things coming in this series, folks. Yeah, but we will talk about that a little bit later in the show. But Ev, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think that was really, really exciting, and I enjoyed it, and my heart was in my mouth waiting for the bad things that did actually happen. Yeah.
Yes, it did.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. Just like, any good scary story, that's what's the deal. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and stick around, and we'll talk to you a little bit at the end.
I'll be here.
And I'm looking forward to introducing RUSS COLCHAMIRO. Russ is the author of the sci-fi mysteries Crackle and Fire, Fractured Lives, Hot Ash, and Blunt Force Rising, the ongoing series featuring hard-boiled private eye Angela Hardwick. Russ is also the author of the rollicking time travel space adventure Crossline, the science fiction fantasy backpacking comedy series Finders Keepers, the Definitive Edition, Genius to Milo, and Astropalooza. These are great names, aren't they? He's the editor of the sci-fi mystery anthology Love, Murder, and Mayhem, and he's co-author and editor of the noir anthology Murder in Montague Falls. Russ has contributed to several other anthologies, including Prism, Tales of the Crimson Deep, Pangea, Altered States of the Union, Camelot 13, TV Gods 2, They Keep Killing Glenn, one of my favorites.
I love that book.
Thrilling Adventure Yarns, Volumes 1 through 3, The Phenomenons, Footprints in the Stars, Devilish and Divine, Badass Moms, and Brave New Girls. A member of the Mystery Writers Association, the Private Eye Writers of America, Horror Writers Association, and the author collective Crazy 8 Press, Russ also hosts and produces his Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster podcast, where he interviews best-selling and up-and-coming sci-fi, fantasy, crime, mystery, and horror authors. For more on Russ's books and his podcast, visit RUSS COLCHAMIRO and follow him on Facebook, as well as Twitter and Instagram at AuthorDudeRuss and Blue Sky AuthorDudeRuss.bsky.social. He lives in New Jersey with his wife and twinges, a black lab Jinx and a precocious kitten Callie. We will talk to him about a little bit of that later. So Jim has also informed us that his internet has gone down, so I get to do the technical part, which is really fun. So let me do that in just a moment. All right, here we go.
Hey guys, I'm here. This is RUSS COLCHAMIRO, and I'm glad to be here. I'm usually on the other one. I'm usually doing the hosting, not the reading. I'm just gonna give you a quick summary of what I'll be reading from. I'm gonna be reading from Blunt Force Rising. It's the fourth book in my Angela Hardwick series. She's a intergalactic private eye, and I'm gonna read a section from chapter 1 to kick us off, and then I'm gonna skip ahead a couple of chapters and kind of set the stage. Just for a little background, this is kind of my first stab at what I consider a little sci-fi horror. I don't think we're going to see too much horror in this section right here, but it kind of sets the stage of where we're at. And the whole situation is there's a big industry event, like a biotech and AI conference taking place on a Galaxy cruise ship. That's just kind of like the setting of where we're at. And with that, I'll kind of kick things off. All right. So, as a private detective, essentially a spy for hire, I get called to work the kinds of cases you might expect. Missing persons, kidnapping, homicide, blackmail, burglary, forgery, arson. But give me a runaway shapeshifter, galaxy hopper, memory thief, or miles-long helix of the universe's DNA any day of the week and twice on Sundays. Over the years, I've also been hired to reposition Halley's Comet, track down a madman from Earth, retrieve a missing shard of a teenager's soul, hunt a dimension-jumping serial rapist, and several other dubious cases I can't mention for reasons I can't mention. Those cases. As for now, though, I'm dealing with other problems. My 7-year-old son, Owen, is showing a gift for increasingly complicated interstellar construction and repairs. A pipe burst in my apartment, my dog walker just quit, and my protege, Eric Whistler, is a huge pain in the ass. Which is to say, he's my partner. And that's a big thing with him, being partners. Whistler and I have been working together going on 3 years now. He first came to me as an overeager little beaver who had his eye on one specific prize, join Team Hardwick. He was as green as a wheatgrass smoothie, but right off, he displayed a real instinct for research. He listened, he learned, and most important, he was loyal. A good-looking kid, he had a jovial, cocky confidence and charm that worked more often than it didn't, until he discovered that without a rock-solid approach and legitimate investigative skills to back them up, and an ever-present respect for danger, confidence and charm only get you so far. And our line of work gets you all kinds of dead. I may only be 34, but I've been down enough dark alleys and been caught in enough folds of time, space, and dimension that I developed calluses from toe to sole. When it came to casework, I'd gotten to the point where I felt I could handle just about anything as long as it happened to me. I knew the risks and was willing to face them. But if anything awful happened to Whistler on my watch, I don't think I'd ever be okay again. Not really. Which left us, between worlds, and that never works. The friction can't last. So Whistler told me in no uncertain terms that I needed to get my head out of my ass if we were going to continue working together. Either we'd be partners for real, or I'd need to cut him loose. Okay, I've accepted him as my partner in the field, but I'm still running a business. I cover all expenses and pay all the bills, including his salary. So I told him in no uncertain terms that if he wants to make more money, if he wants someday to have at least a small voice in the financial decisions that impact the business, that he needs to sign clients. He needs to bring in revenue, like I do. Life ain't cheap, and it ain't getting cheaper. So you know what the little son of a bitch did? He landed a client. And not just any client, a whale. One of the whaliest type whales in an ocean full of whales. Thureda Ranadine founded, owns, and operates Ranadine Cybernetics, a leader in the development of artificial intelligence and the sole manufacturer of androids. It's not the kind of gig I usually take, but she hired us to provide additional security on the Triumph, the venue for the annual Cybernetics, AI, Biotech, and Robotics Conference. Ranadine Cybernetics is the lead sponsor, and Thureda is the event chair. Not a bad get, Whistler says, if I do say so myself. Unless you have more girlfriends with access to new clients, I say, keeping an eye out for snipers and suicide bombers, and they're outside the event right now. Let's call this one a nice win and see how it goes. Whistler tilts his head at Celine Garin, his latest strawberry blonde girlfriend, and flashes his big brown eyes at her. At 25, Whistler still carries himself with a cocky mojo, sort of winky flirty, but underneath he's a sweet guy, a romantic. He chuckles at me a bit too confidently. Nice? Oh, please. One of these days you're going to realize when you fly with me, you fly first class. On this trip you do. Celine kisses his light brown cheek, then rubs off most of the red lipstick left behind, marking her turf. Miss Ranadine is generous that way. Celine recommended us for the job. She's Thureda Ranadine's executive assistant at Ranadine Cybernetics, a role that brings its own heat. Celine is also an android. Though enacted less than 10 years ago, androids have full rights and protections under the law, on paper. But that doesn't mean everyone in E-Town accepts androids as legitimate citizens. Even fewer tolerate android and organic relationships. I don't mean to rush you, Miss Hardwick. I doubt we're in any danger, but with the death threats against Miss Ranadine, it's probably best if we go aboard. Approaching us now, Thureda is a handsome woman, mid-40s, with wire-rimmed glasses. Her eyes dart back and forth. Wise counsel, she says. This is my personal security team. He's Kowalczyk, she's Nen. They'll be with me throughout. Okay. I've never seen this much security at a cruise port before. There's the standard infrared and X-ray machines, retinal ID scanners, intercept towers, and armed guards. In addition to the cruise port's fleet, I've spotted several Ranadine security drones and bomb-sniffing dogs. Kept at a distance behind concrete barriers and patrolled by a combination of E-Town PD and port security, protesters shout at the arriving passengers. The pro-Android crowd hold up their signs, including Android Lives Matter, Stop Android Hate, and No one should know their fate. The anti-android sentiment is equally enthusiastic. Androids are an abomination. No one lives forever. and replace the Raider Ranadine before she replaces us. Watch it, someone shouts. A clear liquid liquor bottle with a flaming gray rag stuffed into the spout arches over us. It shatters on the asphalt about 20 feet away. Glass shards pop. Flames erupt. Shocked, but probably not surprised, the crowd scream, hunching and ducking for safety. The larger of her two private security guards, Kowalczyk shoves the Raider behind him, using his hulking size as a shield. A tiny raven-haired woman with a bob haircut and pointy jaw, Nen lasers in on the crowd. Behind dark sunglasses, she reverse engineers the flaming bottle's flight path. With a raised chin, she follows the trajectory from the impact site back through the air to the launch site. She isolates the coordinates. Likely assuming the assailant has fallen back into the crowd to voyeuristically watch the resulting chaos or slinked away to avoid capture, Nen scans for the attacker. With impressive quickness, she jackrabbits through a line of frazzled passengers waiting to check their luggage curbside or enter the glass wall terminal. Nen hops over a barrier and slides feet first into the legs of a gangly young punk. With a single punch to the jaw, she knocks him unconscious. Nen drags his limp body by the collar and, without a word, drops him in front of 3 uniformed police officers who are not as fast on the draw. That's the other consideration that comes with landing a whale. They pay very large fees. 1, because they can. 2, because they have a problem not easily solved. 3, because you're more expendable than they are. If it means you taking a bullet so they don't have to, they consider that very much to be your problem. Whistler keeps Celine close to him. Her left pinky twitches. I didn't realize androids can process stress that way. With the chaos subdued beneath the midday sunshine, Thorada raises her back, her black pencil-thin eyebrows beneath her styled platinum blonde hair. Seemingly unfazed, she heads toward the terminal. I hope you enjoy the circus, Hardwick. It should be quite the weekend. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of move ahead to our next section. Sorry, I thought I had this marked off. Just give me 1 second, and I'll be right with you. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm usually better about this. Here we go. Okay. All right, here we go. Oh boy, I am really sorry about this. I'm sorry, my bookmark fell out of place. I apologize. I'll get us right on track in just a minute. Here we go. Okay, great. All right, we are ready to go. All right, so this is moving a little bit ahead, and they're at one of the conference panels. The guest speakers, 3 of them, take their seats at the table up front. Okay, folks, the moderator says, I see everyone is properly lubricated. Laughs. Okay, welcome to our panel on closing the loop, bringing organics deeper into empirical, computational, social choice, and preference reasoning. My name is Bartholomew Suzuki, professor of synthetic brain function at the Wiley Foundation. With me tonight are my esteemed colleagues. On my left, Dr. Damian Joyce, Chancellor of the Neilder Stranum Institute for the Advancement of Digital Functionality, and to my right, Abella Laurent, Chief Computer Engineer at High Beam Technologies. Abella, can you help us out? Sure, Bart. Computational social choice is an interdisciplinary field of study where social choice theory, focused on design and analytical methods for collective decision-making, intersect with a combination of computer science, artificial intelligence, political science, economic theory, logic, and other disciplines. Or more simply stated, the study and implementation of advanced computer sciences examined and implemented through the lens of social awareness. You mean androids, someone from the crowd yells out. Well, yes, that's part of it. Laurent slightly scrunches her face, seemingly put off by the reductive comment. But it's more complex than that. The more profound fundamental questions we're asking and seeking to answer center around how best we can achieve betterment of the realm as a whole while navigating the various ethical quandaries and potential exploitation of advanced computer science. Well said, Suzuki says, doing his best as moderator to keep the crowd interested and on track, but also tame enough so as not to disrupt the discussion. Damien, you've done quite a bit of research on this topic. What's the latest thinking about getting children started in computer science and the social responsibilities that come with it at the elementary level? From the audience, I could barely get my kid to brush her teeth, and you want her to be a socially responsible computer tech? Raucous laughter. I have 4 at home myself, Damien Joyce says, his smile wide and enthusiastic. But you know kids these days, put a device in their hands and they're hypnotized. Mesmerized, someone yells out. Zombified, computer zombified, yells another. Socially conscious, computer zombified. Laughter overwhelms the room, but a handful of attendees, including the androids, aren't laughing. One stands up, although he's on the other side of the room toward the front. Through my contact lens, I can read his name tag, Gerald, J's scar under his right eye. What about the missing androids, he says loudly, silencing the crowd. Looking late 30s, early 40s, Gerald is dressed in an expensive gray suit. Almost too formal for this crowd, but maybe that was his point. He wants all eyes on him and to be taken seriously. They're vanishing off the street. The cops don't care. Nobody cares. You want to talk about social responsibility? So be responsible. What are we doing about it? Lots of blank stares and heavy blinking until someone else chimes in. His name tag says Litton. Quiet down, buddy. We're trying to learn something here. Obviously not. Androids are disappearing. We don't know who's taking them or why, but one by one we're being erased. My people were being exterminated. Your sense of humor is exterminated. Litton's shout elicits some uncomfortable chuckles. Typical, Gerald says. I hear lots of grandiose talk and sophisticated words to cover up what you really mean. We're just science experiments to you, artificial playthings, second-class citizens. You belittle us and don't overcharge your battery, pal. We're on a galaxy cruise. Lighten up. Lighten up, another android says, a woman 2 rows in front of me. He's right. You want us to lighten up when our people, androids, Litton corrects, when citizens are disappearing. And your answer to this terrifying social problem is to mock us? Hey, Litton says, I was just trying to lighten the mood so we can. Who cares about your mood? Retorts Sebastian, a third android in a blue 3-piece suit in the front row, now facing Litton. My friends are being kidnapped, sold into slavery, or maybe being experimented on, and your solution is to lighten the mood? Come on now, Suzuki says, having clearly lost control of the panel. Why don't we all just, what's your job, Gerald says to Litton. Your profession. Patent attorney. Why? You have kids? That throws Litton. What? Kids, Gerald repeats. Do you have kids? Yeah, Litton says suspiciously. Saliva smears his lower lip. So, how would you feel if one of your kids just disappeared off the street one day? No explanation, no trace of them, nothing. You can't eat, can't sleep, can barely breathe. And while you're melting down, having panic attacks, some insensitive pig like you says to your face in front of a room full of people that your sense of humor has been exterminated, and then says dismissively, hey, I'm just trying to lighten the mood. I don't know about anyone else, but my heart is pounding, my face and armpits raging hot, gnarly with stinking sweat. I shouldn't visit that place deep inside myself, the place where the monster lives, where I've buried my darkest fears, that my little boy, Owen, will disappear one day without a trace, with no idea where he is, who took him, what they're doing to him or why, and with no leads to find him. It actually did happen once, nearly destroyed me. The light and dark, always and forever, battling inside of me for control of me. Yeah, Sebastian says, brow furrowed. Beneath his 3-piece suit, I can see he's wide in the chest. How about it? Let's kidnap one of your kids, then crack a few jokes. Already red-faced, Litton loses his shit. You son of a bitch! He shoves his chair aside and trips over attendees seated near him. There's some yelling, pushing, and shoving until 2 Triumph security guards barge in and go after Sebastian. Probably embarrassed for getting himself into this mess, Litton plays to the crowd to save face, doubling down on his outrage. He said he was going to kidnap my kids. I'm going to kill that motherfucker. The security guards grab Sebastian by the arms, but they have trouble containing him. On average, Jericho androids have 1.5 times the strength of a humanoid. With Sebastian, they're a few guards short. Okay, he says, fine, I'm leaving. But we all know the truth about the death code, and my friends are disappearing. Do the math. This isn't over. All right, that's what I got for now. If you want to read the rest of what's going on in this madness, Blunt Force Rising, it just went on sale yesterday. So make sure you check it out. And also, just so you know, it's the 4th book in the series, but they're all standalone. So you can read in any order. In each book, I reintroduce all the characters in the world building so you can kind of jump in from wherever you are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Russ. And congrats on the new book out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, the first book in the series is Crackle and Fire, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yep. Someone was asking in the chat about where this book fell in the series, and I thought that was the one to start with.
Crackle and Fire is 1. Fractured Lives is 2. Hot Ash is 3, and now Blunt Force Rising is 4.
Which is a great title, by the way. I really love that, Blunt Force Rising.
Thank you.
Very cool.
And I'm writing book 5 as we speak.
Nice. Okay. And I've got an easy tip for you. You don't ever have to worry about losing your bookmark if you just memorize your reading ahead of time.
Of course.
It's only a novel, right? I mean, you spend enough time with it. You probably. So we do have one question from the audience. This is from Teresa Derwin.
Okay.
Have you got a background in IT?
No, God, no. Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, I don't. I futz around a little bit, but I do a lot of work in my day job. I actually work in the real estate market, and I'm involved with a lot of what's called prop tech, which is property technology. So I'm involved with a lot of how the interfaces work and how VR and AR are being infused in real estate, plus all the apps and the way from the construction side to it could be from, you can book a hotel desk from your iPhone. You could use VR and AR to overlay construction designs to kind of see what's coming ahead. Various platforms that'll enable you to track data and collect information. So I've sort of got my hands in it tangentially, but believe me, if you want someone to write computer code, I'm not the guy you call.
Okay, good to know. So you're not going to be programming any androids in that.
I am really not. No.
Awesome. So I'm curious. Tell us a bit about how you came up with Angela Hardwick. Your writing has been you've written in a lot of different sort of genres or related genres. Angela Hardwick seems to be a synthesis of a lot of things that have interested you as a writer. And also, I mean, and I'm speaking from knowledge from our past conversations as a reader too.
Yes.
So how did you come up with this character?
So a little history just for you guys. So Jim and I go back a long ways. And actually Jim was, and I've told the story before, Jim was really instrumental in helping me with my first novel, which was Finders Keepers, which is a sci-fi backpacking comedy that turned into a series. In book 2 of that series, I introduced this character of Angela Hardwick, but it was sort of like blink and you miss her. She was in one piece of one chapter once, but my whole life I've always loved crime fiction and Bogart and noir and all the classic tropes, with the fedora sitting in the halo of a street lamp and the mist and the fog and the rain and detectives and darkness. I always wanted to do a character sort of like that. So I kind of threw her in there because I thought it was just like a kernel of an idea, but I really kind of just immediately responded to it. So I beefed her up to a secondary character in the 3rd book in the series, and she got some love. And I said, you know what? This is my girl. I'm going to be really involved. So then after that, I wrote a short story with her to kind of see if I could do it for real. And it worked. I've since written a half dozen short stories with her, and I started with the first novel, and now I've done 4 novels so far. The 5th one's coming, and my plan, at least, I see this as the first 5 books as kind of like series 1. And then I'm going to do another 5, which I'm going to sort of look at as like series 2. And then just depend on, how many years I got, how much steam I got in me, and how much the fans are responding to it. Because they're standalone mysteries, theoretically, I could write Angela Hardwick indefinitely.
Yeah. I mean, I love that when a character just sort of creeps in from the sidelines and takes the spotlight. I think when a character, she said it great here, when a character grabs you like that, you have to keep them going. Yeah.
And just for those who don't know her, in my mind, Hardwick she's part Blade Runner, part Doctor Who, part Sarah Connor.
Okay. So a lot of influences there that you're bringing into kind of an original shape and going in a unique direction. And Finders Keepers is, if anyone listening hasn't read it, I would say, do yourself a favor and check it out. It's a terrific novel. And then Genius to Milo is the 2nd book in that series. So that's where Angela first appeared. Right.
She just like real briefly in this really, in a chapter that I really love. It's really kind of fantastical and out there. And her role, the fact that she's a private eye doesn't matter in the context of that one scene, but it was just sort of like, once she just showed up, it was just one of those indescribable things. I can't tell you the hows and the whys. It's one of those things where kind of like when you know, you know.
Yeah.
And oh, there you go. Speaking of knowing,
that's it. Your intern has arrived.
Yes, yes. And then, you know,
Your
since
research
then,
assistant.
yeah, you know, and since then, you know, Hardwick is almost like she's just a part of me, and I just can't imagine, you know, my writing life without her. You know, and the other element that I would just add is, you know, I mentioned it briefly in what I read, is that, you know, she's got this crazy job, right? She doesn't have a 9-to-5 job. I mean, she could be gone forever or never. And she's got a son. And the question becomes, in the first 2 books in the series, can I be this hard-boiled intergalactic private eye and be a good mother to my son? If the answer is yes, what does it look like? And if the answer is no, what does that look like? And then, so it gives her an element that I felt Hardwick wouldn't be Hardwick if she wasn't also a mother. I wanted that contrast between the hard-boiled life and how do I be this maternal figure to this young child who's kind of coming up in the world.
Yeah, so I mean that's great, because one of the things that I think in a lot of the early noir and in a lot of private eye fiction, you see that the main characters, the detectives, are not really that fleshed out. They have a very narrow scope of existence, and you've given her a much fuller, kind of more authentic life.
Yeah, I sort of, in a way, she's also, you know, one of my influences is, you know, John Constantine from Hellblazer, and also if you've read any of Harlan Coben's books, the Myron Bolitar books, just sort of like she's got this team of people around her. They're not, she's got Whistler, who's her partner, but she's got these other people in her life. They don't work for her, but they kind of help in. She's got a friend of hers, Nini's a nurse. Always good to have that. She's got this woman, Dolores, who's this big burly woman. She works at she's like a baggage handler. She's big. She's kind of like the muscle. And then she's got this guy, Frankie the Brush, sounds like a hitman, but he's a contractor. And he kind of pops in, and he's got this lieutenant. So these people kind of pop in and out of her life, and they help her sometimes, they give her grief sometimes. But for me, I wanted her to have a real life that was outside the casework. And I wanted them to exist outside of it, but also to blend. And as we know, if you drag your friends into your dangerous life, sometimes it's not going to go that well. Yeah.
And that can really give you the elements of some great drama, some great tension and suspense.
Yeah, and that really, you see that take place in books 3 and 4. The people in her world. She's going to have some explaining to do.
Okay. So I know no one has asked, but I'm sure it's on everyone's mind. What is your cat's name?
So that is Callie.
Okay, Callie.
And it's funny the way we got her is that we decided, I was a cat person my whole life, but my wife was a dog person. But when we met, I had a cat. He was getting up there. I said, well, when he's finished, we can get a dog. We did. He died a couple of years ago. We got another dog. I wanted to get another cat. We finally decided about 3 months ago, okay. 2 days later, the woman who cleans our house says, oh, you know, I adopted this cat 6 months ago, but I work 2 jobs and I'm never home. I'm going to have to give her up to a shelter. Do you know anybody who wants her? 2 days later, the cat was living here.
All right. Nice. So that worked out well for the cat.
It was pure. It was just, you know, it was kismet, you know, just like we decided, and she just materialized out of the air, Hardwick style.
All right. So we have one more question from the audience here, from JJ Soto. Have you dreamt about Angela Hardwick before writing her? It sounds like she was percolating in your subconscious for a while.
I can't say that I had any dreams that I can recall, but as I was saying before, you know, I've been watching and really just an avid consumer and fan of crime and detective fiction. Ever since I was a little kid, there was always some sort of like drawn to kind of like the darker. I mean, I like Star Wars and Star Trek and all that stuff too, and Avengers and superheroes, but the kind of the dark, you know, the person who operates in the shadows, but is not part of an agency, is just their own, you know, rogue element who goes out there, has always been, you know, integral for me. Even though a lot of people see me as being very outgoing, dynamic, and animated, I also have a very serious, introspective side to me. I'm very comfortable in my style. I'm not lonely. I think a lot. I read. Can't see, but back there, I've got a wall full of books on philosophy and psychology and mythology. And I read. I'm an avid reader of that kind of thing, and it all kind of like soaks in. And I like to blend. And even Jim, when you saw my first book, which was a comedy, even in Finders Keepers, I've always had this kind of philosophical bent to my writing and kind of the exploration of, I like the big questions. Why are we here? What does it mean? How do I exist? Do I understand myself? Do I understand others? And then all the other stuff that goes with it. And then you layer that onto these crazy, crime fiction and galactic chaos. I like all of those elements to blend into my novels. I like to have, whether you call it more pulp fiction or popcorn fiction or whatever, how you want to describe it. But I like to have layers. There's some there beneath the there. And
right. Yeah. So some philosophy mixed in with the action.
The subtext is always there. And because I don't know how to write any other way, whether I do it well or not, that's for other people to decide. The execution, we'll see. But every novel that I write, every story I write, there's the plot, or there's the A plot and there's the B plot, but there's always a theme. There's the theme of character, and there's also internal exploration while the plot is unfolding. And I like the fact when characters struggle, when they have the internal existential conundrums while they're trying to, save the day, solve the case, get out of trouble. I like those elements to intersect, so that when the time the novel is done, you kind of I want people to walk away and go, wow, that was like, not only was the plot cool, but after it was over, like I thought about it and like, wow, there was like some stuff there. And that's my hope anyway, All
right. Terrific. Well, Russ, thanks so much for sharing your story with us tonight. And we'll have you back on at the end to talk about some more stuff and hear what you might have coming up next.
Good stuff.
All right. Thank you. Our next reader tonight is Tommy B. Smith. Tommy is a writer of horror and dark fiction, author of the Mourner's Cradle, Poisonous, the short story collection Pieces of Chaos, and the Black Carmenia series, including the recent Oblivion's Child. A two-time Imadjinn Award-winning author and 2023 Michael Knost Wings Award-nominee, his work has been featured in a variety of magazines and anthologies to span the years. His presence currently infests Fort Smith, Arkansas, where he resides with his wife and 6 cats. More information can be found on his website, tommybsmith.net. Let's welcome Tommy.
Hello, everyone. So the newest entry in the Black Carmenia series, Oblivion's Child, emerged this year. It is a work of interdimensional horror. From it tonight, I will read to you from the opening chapter. Under the Storm. The void speaks, not in sentences, or the syllables of humankind's chosen languages, but in a vocabulary which unbinds the equations of our essences. If we find its voice within ourselves, we may become lost in the dark channels of the boundless elsewhere. The greater portion of the human brain cloaks this dark truth from each individual so that we may assimilate into the whole of the colony, which, in human terms, we know as society. It has eyes, a mouth, and a form which hides in plain view in our walls, doors, ceilings, graves, maps, and riddles. Its eyes are everywhere. If we meet its stare, it will smile, knowing that we know, and our knowing will be our undoing. On the battered shore of a stormy sea, an old sailor with rum-soaked breath spoke a warning. "Watch your step, boy, lest you get swept into the sea and lost in the tide." but who listens to drunken old sailors? Other drunk sailors, mostly, till the captain tells him to get back to work. Yet that was what the old sailor said to me that day. A drunken sailor with many stories to tell, but little time to tell them. The same could be said of my grandmother, who took me away to shelter as the storm came down. She said of the storm that night, thunder crashing down all around us, and the sky lighting up like pure fury. That's how the sky talks, Xander. I lay wrapped up in my quilt, waiting to fall asleep, but fearful I might not wake up. My family has a strange relationship with death. Perhaps it's always been that way. My mother hated her place in this world and wanted no part of it. She tried to drown me as a toddler. Upon my birth, she didn't give me a real name, just a Z with X's after it. That's what's on my birth certificate, but my grandmother has always called me Xander. My grandmother, Catherine Sinclair, was an imposing woman to some, tall with iron gray hair wound upward on top of her head, and her style of dress leaned heavily purple. Over the years, she has told me many stories, among them the tale of Dick Whittington and his cat, and a Russian folk tale about three brothers in a mountain of salt. While the storm bellowed down on all of us little people, wrenched the ship from its moorings, and tore its wooden planks, she began another story, the tale of a lost tribe. She spoke of its fiercest hunter, a man of few words who had carved his bow from the choicest hickory, and of its elder, a man of medicines and remedies who knew the stars by their ancient names and spoke to fire. Here my grandmother paused because the thunder became deafening and would not allow her to finish. We'll finish it another night, she said at last. When I asked her about it later, she shook her head and said, never mind that. What do you want for supper? I settled on fish, which she battered and fried in a pan, a good meal made better with a dash of salt. She had bought the fish from the men who worked in the shack near the docks, gutting and cleaning the day's catch. We were the last customers of the day. As the storm clouds gathered gray and dark, they'd closed their little shop for the remainder of the evening. We ate in Aunt Helen's house up on the rocks, while fierce lightning and thunder crashed down with heavy torrents of rain. My grandmother carried Helen's cup of yogurt to her in bed and stayed to talk to her for a while. She rejoined me when I finished and carried our plates smeared with grease and crumbs to the sink. The sky's rage subsided. The thunder drew distant, though the rain kept falling, but found a steadier rhythm. My grandmother sat in her easy chair. She hadn't spoken since emerging from Helen's bedroom. Her hands rested on the chair's soft blue arms. She stared across the room, preoccupied and perhaps even troubled. I didn't know well enough to let it go. Bored in the quiet home, pondering a tale without an ending, I asked my grandmother if she could finish her story. It's past your bedtime, she said. Say goodnight to your Aunt Helen. My aunt lay in bed, pasty and empty-eyed. Without switching on the light, I approached her bedside with soft steps. Good night, Aunt Helen, I said. She didn't respond. I kissed her on the cheek and retreated to my cot in the partially cleared storage room on the opposite end of the house. As my grandmother's unfinished tale left too much to the imagination, so did the darkness of the windowless storage room. From it, a strange shape smiled at me. Its smile drew wide, and its eyes became large. I started to cry. What frightened me the most, its alien appearance without solid definition. The mouth stretching wider and wider, that might have swallowed me while I choked on my own fear in the dark. Its two-dimensionality, the fact that behind those eyes and mouth there existed nothing but malice, gleeful hunger, and infinity. Then with the blinding eruption of light, it vanished. My grandmother stood at the door, her hand on the light switch. Xander, are you all right? She'd heard me crying. Upon seeing my tear-streaked face, which I tried to hide, she stayed for an hour after and read to me. Captured in that thick, blue-bound volume, tales of magic and wonder soothed my fears. I don't remember falling asleep. From then on, I slept with the nightlight. Hoping to calm my anxieties, my grandmother plugged it into the room's receptacle and cast a pale glow from the wall. only enough to unbalance the utter darkness and banish my fear. The next morning, the sun shone bright outside. Foamy waves lapped at the shores. The seagulls were busy. One would never know the storm had struck its vicious number the night before, except that I found a plank of battered wood buried in the sand. Thank you so much, my friends.
I can toast with an octopus mug. Quite the same as what you have, Tommy. Thank you for sharing your words, sir.
Thank you for having me.
That's great. Thank you. Yes. So I have a question for you, just listening. So you introduced this as interdimensional horror.
Yes.
All right. So is that like your take on cosmic horror, or is it sort of a different niche or subgenre of horror?
It is a term I really don't ever hear used, but yes,
Yeah.
basically my slant on cosmic horror. So many begin to speak of cosmic horror and, of course, inevitably launch into speaking of Lovecraftian horror, which, yes, is cosmic horror, but I like to emphasize that cosmic horror is many things because the cosmos is many things. Lovecraft was very influential, as were so many other authors from that era, Algernon Blackwood and Machen and so many others. But really, the cosmos is rife for exploration, and explanation. So,
Yeah. And that's a great reason to be writing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But I agree with you. I think too often cosmic horror gets shoved into that Lovecraftian mold, and there were a lot of late 19th, early 20th century horror writers who did cosmic horror that were not Lovecraft, who really shaped it. William Hope Hodgson, Robert Chambers, Clark Ashton Smith, and I think it's important to find a new approach into that part of the horror genre.
Mm-hmm. And a different take on an intergalactic kind of cosmic horror would be one of the movies, like Event Horizon. That's a whole different way of looking at it too. That's definitely not Lovecraft. So that's cool.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you read, Tommy, that lead you into this world of cosmic horror? Anything that strikes your fancy?
Well, of course, there's nonfiction, and there is all the physics and quantum physics and all of that as far as science and history as well. With the first book, New Era, was more of a story of horrors which transcended time, and I found myself, and I've seen many stories, and you have as well, that sort of bounce back and forth between different periods of time, and that was one that linked certain events and objects, past and present, and one that sort of illustrated how travesties and tragedies of the past can affect the present, and the smallest actions that we may execute in the present will affect the future. And in that way, it sort of evolved into just dimensional horror by this book, Oblivion's Child, which deals with concepts of time and space and relativity, and in different horrifying ways, sometimes subtle and later on in the book, very, very much obvious. But
well, that's fascinating. And just to follow up on that thought, I'm curious, how do you keep track of the time when you're doing a back and forth in time thing like that?
There are some books that I have to, like with the first book, New Era, it was important to me. I did use a bit of an outline just to keep myself perfectly straight on what exactly affects what, past, present to future. And so that sort of helped to keep me on track.
Cool. So who's done what to whom and when? Okay.
When, I get you. And why is this particular marker on the ground, and why was it recently disturbed, and why was it not undisturbed for this many years, and just all these really small details.
Very cool. So now, are these things physics and sort of the science of the universe and relativity and time? Are those things that you have a background in, or just things that you find interesting as a writer?
They're just things I've found interesting as a writer, and I read widely within the horror genre and also outside it. dark fantasy and the like, and of course matters of science and history, and these are all topics which interest me, and also I find it interesting to instill into our fiction the fact that our entire universe can become, or our place in the universe, our perspective, which really, from our perspective, is the universe, because it's everything we see, know, and experience, can be completely upended. We can discover it to be completely off base, completely wrong, and that can be horrifying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure that we've barely scratched the tip of the iceberg with the full range of human knowledge. I'm sure is just a small amount of what there is to know about the universe.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. So now this is book 2, Oblivion's Child, in the Black Carmenia series. Am I saying that right? Carmenia?
Yes, absolutely. That is exactly how it's said.
Great.
Okay, Gardenia.
Okay.
That's easy to remember then. Yeah.
What does the series title mean?
The Black Carmenia is a flower with a very rare specimen of flower with some strange and unusual properties. There is actually a red Carmenia, which is more common. The Black Carmenia, far less so. And it's this one that retains some of the properties which can be deadly or can be very interesting, depending on if you know what you're doing when you approach one of these. Usually you're better off not to do so at all, but of course, people who unsound decisions make for good stories. So
I was just thinking that if everybody walked away when they saw one, it would be a very short book.
not everyone knows what they should have done until afterward, but then we have a story. So
2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a preference specifically as a horror writer? Do you have a preference between writing short or long fiction?
When I started out, I preferred to write short fiction, and that was because I suppose I'd gone along with that. Well, there's that myth early on that many writers here starting out is that you should get your foot in the door basically by trying to sell a few short stories to different magazines and the like, which is not necessarily the path you have to follow. But I feel it did help me to hone my craft along the way, and over time, I've been more inclined to lean toward longer works. I had a novella released, and then it seemed to get over time, I found myself investing in longer and longer works. So these days, I would say it was closer to novella and novel length works I was more inclined to write, but I still do appreciate very much writing and reading short stories as well. And I would actually like to get back to that more at some point.
Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Do you have any interest to write in other genres?
I would say now when I started out, I was writing fantasy as well, dark fantasy, but it was a little too dark for some of the fantasy publications.
Oh,
I kept some of those rejections. There are far worse reasons to be rejected for, so that was entertaining. But then sometimes some of the horror publications, this is a little more dark fantasy. I'm like, well, I recognize that, but I have to try. So yes, I do write some dark fantasy as well. As horror.
And some stories probably walk the line right between the two. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah. And the idea of genre is fascinating because sometimes it just tells the bookseller where to put it on the shelf. But, the readers may enjoy both of those without having a difference. So, but it's kind of cool that you're interested in the two. So.
And some people know exactly what they want to read. They know exactly they want to read extreme horror.
Yes.
They want to read one fellow. I know I was signing books at a convention one time. He walked by and said, "Is it time travel?" And at the time, it wasn't. But he lost interest once he discovered it wasn't time travel. So, it's some people are very specific in their reading habits. I try to be a little more broad than that in my reading habits. And it's nice when other people are willing to take a chance on something. You don't know what you might be missing. I mean, there's a lot of good fiction out there. And horror can be many things. We know this.
Yes, it's quite true. It's not just Saw and yeah.
Yeah, I like to say it ain't just chainsaws and zombies.
Yeah.
So, but I agree. I think as a writer, it's important to read widely and read outside the genre that you write in most often, and just kind of understand. And as you said too, another great point is to read a lot of nonfiction.
Sometimes it's just interesting. It can become research in retrospect, and that's fun too.
And
Yeah.
we have a question from Rick Hipson. Thank you, Rick. What do you find you can do with your stories in a novella that you? I think he means what that you can do with your stories that you can't do in a novella.
No, he says what that you can't do in a novel. He clarified it
Or
after.
novel in a novel.
Yeah.
Okay.
What can you do in a novella you can't do in a novel?
Here we go.
Good question.
Thank you. Yes.
Well, I find a novella is generally more to the point. It's fine. Once upon a time, it was I suppose considered to be kind of an awkward length for a time. Even though I remember being younger and reading many novellas I enjoyed, but they were usually packaged together in a short story collection. But just a quick story that it jumps right in. Sometimes you don't want to spend an entire chapter reading a description of some character's shoes and what the brass buttons on his jacket and this and that look like. I mean, the descriptions can be immersive sometimes too, but novella, I really enjoy the length. I mean, I find it usually some are more atmospheric, some are very action packed. I find it lends itself very well to horror. It's hard to say in specific, but I have read so many novellas that I really did enjoy that really seem to do the job without, and also it's a tighter form of story.
Yeah.
It's all killer, no filler, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, because in a novella, especially in horror, it's easier to keep the dread and the suspense going and get you really on the edge of your seat, and then bam. And sometimes it's harder to do in a full-length novel. So that's an interesting way to look at it. I remember fondly the old days where you used to have two novellas in one book, and you would open up the front, it would be facing one way, and you'd turn it over and it would be upside down the other way. I think there was maybe More Mysteries that did that, but I thought that was a great idea. I think we should bring that back.
I think so too. I enjoyed that. I remember a couple of those.
Yeah, the Ace doubles.
That's it. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, it was, and I saw they did a lot of science fiction too. You'd flip it one way or the other and get sort of the front. So, well, Tommy, thank you so much for sharing your book with us tonight. Why don't we have Russ come back on, and we'll hear what everyone has coming up in the future.
Yeah. And F mentioned to us that she was not able to stay for the end. She's one of those people who gets up at 5 a.m. and is usually asleep before the show starts. So she had to go to bed. So thank you for joining us, F. We appreciate it. We appreciate having you on.
Yes.
So, welcome back, Russ.
Hey.
All right.
Where's the cat?
She's, I don't know. I think she just snuck out.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was a great segue, Russ, that you told us a story about how you got your cat, and then I was reading Tommy's bio, and it mentions his 6 cats.
Yeah.
Around here somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get more, but my wife's not quite ready for that yet.
Right.
Well, you do have a big dog. Yeah.
Yeah. She wants to get more dogs, and I don't have a problem getting another dog, except for the fact that I told her I'm not walking 2 dogs. I'm just not going to do it. So if you're committed to walking 2 dogs every single day, you can do that, but I'm not gonna. One is my maximum.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair. You only have 2 hands at a time. Yeah.
That's right.
That's
and you've met Carol. You've met Jinx. She's 70 pounds and she's muscular and strong.
Feisty. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she's a great dog, but one's good.
2 might be a bit awkward, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to if you're going to double up and you have a big dog, you got to go small on the.
That's the thing. Well, you know what? I love the they're not the pugs. What are they, like the Boston Terriers? Like
Boston Terriers,
ones that have, like, the smushy face dogs.
Yeah,
I love those.
My mom dubbed those 8-legged dogs because when they walk, they go so fast.
Yeah, they do. I know. I love those dogs.
That's one of my dogs is a Boston
really?
Terrier. Yeah.
Okay.
He's the second Boston Terrier we've had, and they are just fantastic dogs, especially for a family
Yeah, they're
Just
really
great.
like they're chill and they're
Yeah.
like I do love them, but apparently they are difficult to adopt because people don't give them up that much. So I'm told. I don't know if that's accurate, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I think clearly we all need to write a dog and cat book next. I
Right.
think. Yeah, that would be great. Good
That-
collaboration.
well, that's so really quickly, because I know we're starting to come up on the end of our time, but Russ and Tommy, do you write animals, pets, cats, dogs into your stories at all?
So Hardwick has a dog.
Okay.
She
That's a
kinda
partner, though.
she pops in and out a little bit. I wouldn't say that she's a major force in the books, and in general, I would say no. But there is one novel that it's been honestly I can say I came up with the idea 30 years ago, originally to be as a graphic novel, something I do want to write, and there is an animal character that actually has significance that I do intend to write this.
Cool.
Cool.
Excellent.
But
Okay.
I'll leave it at that for now.
I've dabbled in that a little bit. There's a cat mentioned in Oblivion's Child, but it's
Oh.
it's referenced, but you don't actually see the cat. So it's I'm sure it'll probably. I mean, having 6 cats around the house, it's probably inevitable that that's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
If nothing else, there's cat hair in the story. Yeah.
That's right.
There is that.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I actually am. I have a story in the anthology a couple years ago called Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse, which is, really fun. And I liked my character so well that I'm expanding it into a novel. So we will be seeing more
cool.
cats at some point.
Very
So-
nice.
Cool.
Nice.
That's kind of fun. Jim, what about you? Do you put any pets in yours?
Yeah, I do every now and then. I have animals in my stories if they make sense. And I wrote a military science fiction story a few years back for an anthology called Dogs of War. It was supposed to be military service animals in a science fiction setting, and mine was about a sort of a motley crew of cyber dogs that were trying to rescue their
Cool.
trainer from a
Naturally.
prison.
Yeah. Although I will give a shout out though to our mutual friend Don Philbrick, who writes under the name Sonny Hatton. He has a collection. He has a collection called "Everyone Is a Moon," and there's a story called "Pets." And he has gotten like people yelling at him over this, and people love it or they hate it, but it's really good.
Yeah.
You have to be careful about how you treat cats and dogs in stories.
No, this one it's good.
So
Yeah.
It's very dark and very twisted.
Okay. And there's a whole website. I think it's called "Does the Dog Die?"
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Russ, what is so you've just had a book come out, or is the release today or is it tomorrow?
So it was actually launch day was yesterday. So
yesterday.
I'm literally just so you guys are so I did a whole bunch of promotion yesterday. You guys are my first stop on the fall 23 book tour. I've got a bunch of appearances coming up over the next couple of months.
Okay.
So for those of you who know, I mean, I know Carol knows because you've been on the show and Jim's been on the show. I host my own podcast, which the new season starts next week. Cool. I'm back on the air, and you were just talking about cosmic horror. I'm doing sci-fi horror for my Halloween special. So that's coming up.
So it might be a little premature to ask you, but what's next for you? What can people look out for in the future?
So I've got a story in. So Keith DeCandido did an anthology called "The 4 Question Marks of the Apocalypse." So and mine was actually the 4 drummers, like rock drummers of the apocalypse, and it's whether I don't know if it even makes any sense, but I do know it's like one of the most batshit crazy stories that I've ever written. I just went full on. I just threw myself into it and went as bonkers as I could. That'll be out this fall.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right on brand for rock drummers. It's just
yes.
It doesn't make sense, but it's bonkers.
Yes. And then I've got I wrote another piece for Patrick Thomas, who's putting out he's got a series called Agents of the Abyss, and it's MI7. So MI6 is the double O's, James Bond and whatnot. So if there's another division that there are classic monsters, but who are like 007s and whatnot as classic monsters. And I have a novella that I wrote in 2020 that's coming out next for him. It's coming out next year. I don't know when, but that one was a lot of fun. It was the descendants of the Invisible Man, of Jekyll and Hyde, and then another original character. And it's sort of I really dug that one. I think you guys that was a lot of fun. That'll be out sometime in 24. Hardwick 5 will be out next year, and I just got invited in to be part of another project that'll be out in 25. And then lastly, I've been doing so I'm a member of Crazy 8 Press. For those that don't know, it's an author collective, and the last 2 years we've had books edited by Michael Jan Friedman called The Phenomenons, and they're just original superheroes. Hildy Silverman and I have co-wrote two-part stories in them. We've kind of been actually driving the big bad in this overarching story. We just got word that we're doing a third one next year, and Hildy and I just broke the story yesterday, and we're going to present it tomorrow. So hopefully that'll be out next year as well. And ours is really, even though there's original superheroes, we have leaned in very heavy on horror.
Okay.
You know, kind of like The Boys, how it's very dark, not perverse, but it's very dark and very gory. And even at one point, the editor said no to something that we did because it was like too much for him to handle.
Too dark. Okay.
It was too dark for him.
Congratulations. Yeah.
That's it. You're just following in Tommy's footsteps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
That's awesome. So plenty to look out for from you, Russ.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah. Tommy, how about you?
Well, I've got the third volume in the Black Carmenia series, which will actually be the final volume coming out next year. Other than that, I've been working on some new short story material in between releases, novel-length releases. So once I crank a few more of those out, probably I'll be leaping into the next project, which could go one of a couple of ways, but I'm pretty sure I know which way that's going to go.
Cool.
I did forget to mention, I'm sorry, just for those who heard me the reading on this, I will say for the Hardwick books, even though the scenes that you heard don't describe this, I can say for sure for the series, it is hands down the bloodiest, most violent installment in the series by a pretty considerable margin. I leaned into it pretty hard.
Okay, well, you got to ramp it up. You can't ramp it down in this series. So
no. This was, when they say, when all hell breaks loose, like no joke, like all hell really breaks loose, and it's
not just half of hell; it's all of hell.
No, it's for me. This was as all in as I think I could get. I was even told actually by my beta readers, they're like, dude, you got to tone some of this down. This is actually too much.
Wow.
Which is because that's not normally my style, but I leaned in. I just wanted to go all in.
Yeah. And I just put a link to F's book in the chat for Crybaby Bridge. It's actually releasing October 3rd. So we got a little nice preview that they allowed her to read. So that was very cool. And each story is about a different bridge.
And Tommy is the next. So you said book 3 in the Black Carmenia series is coming next year?
Yes, that will be out next year.
Will that be the last book, or do you see the series going beyond book 3?
I could see that particular universe expanding farther and deeper than that, but in that official story arc of the Black Carmenia, that will be the last volume.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
Cool.
So I feel like we should have like an all hell breaks loose, super dark anthology or like write off here to see who can out dark the others. I have a feeling I would be like, no, that's too dark.
Yeah.
So
is there such a thing, too dark? I don't know. Yeah.
I just finished reading a book this morning, actually. It's one of the darkest books I've ever read, and you could at the very end you could just kind of see what was coming, and it was like, I don't want to read this, but I must finish this book. It's called The Other by Thomas Tryon.
Ooh.
All right.
So, yeah, he wrote, I think, primarily in the 70s, but he also wrote Harvest Home, which is a classic folk horror novel, and the other was made
Oh,
into
yeah.
a movie. But it's I'm not going to tell you because it's an ending that shouldn't be spoiled, but it was dark. It's a dark book. But Carol, what about you? What's coming up for you?
I have a couple stories in the works that don't have dates yet, but I have a really cool story that was a retelling of influenced by one of the Poe stories. It's coming out in the Nevermore anthology from Falstaff Books, and some other stuff that isn't on a calendar yet. You know how that goes.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. And we have the links also for Tommy and Russ's books in the chat there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Jim, what about you? You have something relatively new out with Tentacles, yes?
Yeah, I just so my new collection of cosmic horror from Weird House Press. I'm just going to quickly share the cover. A bright and beautiful
I
eternal
love
world.
this.
I love that cover, Jim. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Me too. Yeah, thanks. The artist is K.L. Turner. He did illustrations for the stories as well, a mix of full color and black and white. And I just got word recently from the publisher the initial limited signed lettered edition sold out, and so they're going to do another. So that's A to Z, and so they're going to do double A to double Z for people who missed out on the.
Ooh, fancy.
So there's another limited, and the it's hardcover, limited signed, full color illustrations. Has bonus stories that the trade paperback
Nice.
won't have, and the trade paperback will be coming out in a few months. So I'll be very excited to see
Awesome.
that. Yeah.
Oh, that is exciting. Yeah. Oh, actually, and we do have some news. The Chaos Clock is an anthology of steampunk cosmic horror from eSpec Books that has just funded, that Jim and I will both have a story in. So
nice.
That's going to be exciting. Yeah. Looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. This has been a lot of fun. Very different stories and three different, author takes on things, but fascinating all taken together.
I'll be at Monster Mania next month. It'll probably be one of the last conventions ever at the Hunt Valley. Delta.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they're literally shutting the doors.
It was funny because I think you posted something about that on
Yes.
Facebook the other day, Russ, and I had heard that it was maybe closing. I don't know how to feel about that. I have so many stories from that hotel.
I know, we've all been there a million times. It was weird, a great layout, but God, it was sucking wind for a long time there.
Well, it was never exactly like
4 stars.
The height of luxury.
No, but I mean, even last year, I was there in July.
Yeah.
That really huge escalator going down, one of them just didn't work.
Yeah.
The air conditioning on the 3rd floor, the common areas, was just broken. It just was not functional. The elevators worked occasionally.
Right.
I mean, like the place, it was just, you could tell that, what I was hoping, because like I said, I'm in the real estate business, so I know how this goes. What I really thought is that they were just waiting for another influx of capital. But given the way, I don't want to get too deep into it, but the real estate market is sucking wind so hard right now that nobody's really funding it. My understanding, somebody posted it actually after I wrote about this, that they think the property was sold for redevelopment. My understanding is that it will not.
That makes sense, actually, given the location. But for those of you who may not be familiar with this place, the Hunt Valley Marriott, I'm not sure. It's gone through some name changes.
The Delta by Marriott,
it was a mainstay for East Coast conventions for the last 20 years. It's in Hunt Valley, Maryland, so it's very accessible from north-south. And I remember going there many times for the Horrified Weekend convention, which was always a wild time. Right. And I know Balticon was there at least once, if not a couple of times, and a bunch of other conventions were there.
Yep.
So it's like, if eventually, if you were going to conventions on the East Coast, you eventually made it to the Hunt Valley Marriott.
Three times a year I've been going.
Yeah. So sad to see it go, but
Yeah.
I think the last time I was there, somebody behind the desk ripped off my credit card. So I'm not too excited.
Geez.
Oh, wow.
Oh no.
Well, I'm not going to miss the giant horse photos that were nailed to the walls. It was so weird. Like you're
I
being
kind of don't want to know.
It's so weird. Like you'll be in your hotel room and they renovated a whole bunch of them. So the rooms are nice. And then mounted on the wall is a giant horse with its like giant nostrils, like hovering like right over your bed. And it was just so weird. Because apparently one of the owners had like a horse. He was a horse enthusiast, and they refused to take them down anywhere. And they were like,
I thought you were going to say you woke up with a horse head on your bed.
You know
but
what?
that's a whole different story.
It was one step away from that. I mean, it was really, it was just like thematically so bizarre.
Yeah,
like you're sitting in the hallway and all these tables are out there and you're hawking your books and people are talking sci-fi conventions and there's giant horses mounted on the wall. It was just very odd.
Yeah, those honestly weren't the weirdest things I saw there, though.
Oh.
we could do a whole evening just on the Hunt Valley Marathon.
Yes, we could.
Anyway, so Carol, you have
yes. I put one more thing I forgot to mention. I'm going to be at the Milford Readers and Writers Festival, September 22nd to 23rd. That's in just over it's near Port Jervis, New York, and I'm on a nifty panel about science fiction leading into monsters with Robert Levy, Dr. Charles E. Gannon, who will be reading with us in December, and Stephanie Feldman, who wrote Saturnalia, and it's moderated by Karen Hewler. I'm really looking forward to that. There's a bunch of other really cool things that they do through the whole weekend, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool.
And just before we sign off, Russ, you mentioned your podcast, and give us the name and where people should go to find it.
Sure. So it's Russ's Rock and Roller Coaster. I host it every Wednesday night, starting September 20th through November 15th, I think. Every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can catch it live. You can register through, I post the links. You can go to my website. You can find them on Eventbrite. You have to register through that. And if you happen to miss it live, afterwards, I record everything and I post it up on my YouTube channel where you can find them. There's my 100th episode is coming up soon. So I'll be celebrating the 100th this fall, which is weird. 3 years ago, I started it during the pandemic. I figured I'm six and out. Well, boy, was I wrong. So it's going strong. And for those who don't know, I do a combination. I do one-on-one interviews or 3-person panels. And some of it's 3 lanes. It's sci-fi, it's crime, mystery, and thriller. And then now horror is the other lane that I've landed on. So I try to mix and match, and we do a combination of themes and some of it's story, TV show recap. Some of it's just thematic stuff. I'm going to do sci-fi horror. I'm doing one on Doctor Who. I've got authors coming in, so I try to keep it lively. And I know, as Carol and Jim know, I kind of have my own goofy kind of sensibility, and we do interviews, we play games, and we have surprises. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. So I'll encourage you to come check it out, and it's free.
Well, thanks to everybody for joining us tonight for Galactic Terrors. I think we've gone a little over. Carol, is there anything else we should?
I put a link to our newsletter for those who haven't signed up. Feel free to join, and no spam, like we say. And please mark your calendar for our next reading, which is always the second Thursday. This will be October 12th, and it's at 8 p.m. with some fantastic horror readers, Krista Carmen, Larry Hinkle, and our own James Chambers will be reading.
And we'll have a to-be-announced guest host to sit in for me that evening, just in time for Halloween. But please like and subscribe, and follow future Galactic Terrors transmissions.
Cool. And
Russ, Tommy, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
That was awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, it was definitely a pleasure to be a part of it.
Very fun. And glad to have you on, and look forward to hearing more about your future work.
Awesome.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Good night.